Welcome to Betrayal Recovery Radio, the official podcast of APSATS, the Association of Partners of Sex Addict Trauma Specialists, hosted by Dr. Jake Porter. APSATS is a nonprofit organization providing professional training and compassionate support to partners affected by problematic sexual behavior and betrayal trauma. In each episode, Dr. Jake guides a conversation of enlightening insights and practical tools to empower those affected by sex addiction and betrayal trauma to use their voices and live their values. The mission of Betrayal Recovery Radio is to offer hope to those in need of healing and growth to those moving through grief. And now, here's your host, Dr. Jake Porter.
Welcome back to Betrayal Recovery Radio. I am your host, Dr. Jake Porter, and today we're going to continue our conversation with actress and writer Maddie Corman as we discuss her powerful film, Accidentally Brave. Accidentally Brave started as a one-woman stage play in which she tells the story of her own personal discovery of the betrayal of her husband. It is a story of grief. It's a story of resilience, of love, of recovery, of humor, heartbreak, and radical honesty. And it is moving and touching. I've watched it twice, watched it with my wife, and just really enjoyed this conversation with Maddie about it. We're joined in the conversation by Jeanne Vattuone, who is the president of APSATS. And I also want to let you know, today we're airing the second half of that conversation. So if you missed the first half, just go ahead and pause this episode, back up one episode, and start there at the beginning of the conversation. That's where you're going to want to pick up on this thing. And then you can come back over here and finish it out with us. Now, before we turn there, this is the official podcast of APSATS, the Association of Partners of Sex Addict Trauma Specialists. So I want to make sure that you're aware of some exciting things coming up from APSATS. Jeannie, our president, is doing a Q&A for those who are interested in certification. That'll be held live via Zoom on July 2nd, 12 Eastern time, noon Eastern time. And you can learn more at apsats.org. Jessica Edens, our vice president, is offering a training on supporting children and families after the discovery of betrayal. That will be live online starting September 11th. And then we've got two offerings of the cornerstone training of the multidimensional partner trauma model. Those will be held in September and October. On September 22nd, it will be timed for those in Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, over in that part of the world. So if you're a listener over there, you know someone who could benefit from the MPTM training, check that out. And then if you've been holding out for an in-person training, there will be one in Seattle, Washington, October 22nd through 25th. All right. I don't want to hold off any longer, except just to say that APSATS is offering a free gift to listeners of the podcast. And you can claim that yourself if you go to apsats.org/podcast. And there is a free download from Dr. Crystal Hollenbeck, a certified APSATS partner specialist, and she is offering a download called Expectations. What should the betrayed expect from the betrayer in the therapeutic process? Knowing what to expect from the betrayer in the therapeutic process is essential for the betrayed partner to heal from their wounds. If you'd like to get that free download, you can get that at apsats.org/podcast. All the links mentioned are in the show notes below. And with that, we're going to continue and finish our conversation with Maddie Corman. One thing I say often to partners is there's nothing pathological about loving your husband or wife, whatever the gender may be. There's nothing pathological about loving your partner, about giving them the benefit of the doubt, about, being quick to forgive. Right. Those things are often marks of maturity and growth and healthy relationships. But it's the lack of the full context, right? The hidden reality. Okay. So this incident of rage, for example, in the context of what I knew is one thing. In the context of what I know now, it takes on a whole different meaning.
Yeah.
But that is a hard thing that partners wrestle with
It is. And listen, it's, as you know, I have deep compassion for the addicts too, and the couples in recovery that are grappling with this when
Yeah.
we see something that feels familiar.
Hmm.
We are off. Well, I speak we as a group. I, as a betrayed partner, am off to the races because it's scary. It's scary to give your heart back to someone who broke it. It's really scary. And it takes a lot of faith. And I also say it's scary to stay with someone who you hurt really badly. And I actually do sometimes say to my partner, wow, you have to wake up every day and look at your wife and kids who you really you broke our hearts. And
Yeah.
and you made the choice to stay and say, I know, and I'm gonna show you. And that's not who I am. And that's part of what I did, but it's not who I am. And I think it takes a lot of courage to do this work for both members of a couple. And I think that the men who are willing, Jake, I heard you speak the other day, and it makes such a difference to us, to the betrayed partner, when the betrayer is proactive and says something in advance.
Yes.
I'm going away, knowing I'm going on a business trip, knowing what I've put you through. I make up that this is probably going to be a challenging time, maybe a triggering time. Here's some thoughts I have that we could put
Yeah.
in place that will make you feel better. I mean, that just goes so far.
Absolutely. Yes.
But I also understand that as the addict, they're like, I don't want to bring it up. Like, if she didn't say anything, like, let me just go. And then she'll say, oh, here's some things you can do. Okay, 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 I'll do it. But thinking in advance, there's just a lot I've learned
Yeah.
that's helpful. But it is early recovery is so much about just rebuilding that trust. And it's wonderful to hear you say that, Jake and Jeannie, that there's nothing wrong with wanting to stay. I actually work with an incredible CSAT, and she said I'm back in a group again. I lead groups and I'm back in a group because I think that's important.
Real. Yeah.
Um, but she said to us, not scientific, but in her practice, in her experience, over 90% of partners that walk into her office want to stay. They don't all stay, but
Sure.
just hearing that, and I'm 10 years in, I've done this movie, just hearing that made my whole body relax a little bit.
Wow.
It just, we want to. Most of us who are entering this part of the world, if we are saying we're looking at addiction and recovery, there's some real love there. And that's what's so confusing is these aren't terrible. Most of us didn't have terrible marriages. There were terrible parts of those marriages, but there were such good parts too. And that's another thing I want to share, because I think I'm finally past early recovery. And in my early recovery, I was like, okay, we're starting anew. We got this thing. And on our good days, it was really good, but I'm not looking back. I got a new ring. I'm taking down the pictures, the wedding pictures, the pictures of our kids being, their birthday parties, they're being born. I don't know. I can't look at that. So we're starting now and everything's fresh and we should do a vow renewal and it should all be this. Recently, I've started to put those photos back up and start to reintegrate that the
Wow.
first 20 years were not a total failure. My husband's always like, no, that was a great day. And I'm like, well, it was, I don't know. I've been robbed of my history. That's a really complicated part of my recovery. And I think most partners, like, I don't know what was true and I don't know what was real. And I thought this was a good day, but who knows what you were up to. And look at that picture. Look at where were you looking there? Whatever it is. But I started to say, oh, I loved the day.
Right.
I loved that day.
Yeah. And so APSATS teaches the multidimensional partner trauma model, and there are 3 phases: safety and stability first, and then that remembrance and mourning, that grief work, and then the post-traumatic growth. And certainly you have shared about those early phases, and you're exhibiting the last, but that grief piece, which you're still doing,
Yeah.
is what I'm hearing you say. You're still in that grief. There's overlap among these phases. It's a process. But there was something from the film about grief that was so poignant, and I teach a lot about grief after betrayal. It's one of the things I get asked to speak about the most. And this gave me like a whole new little angle on it, a new facet to look through it. And so I'm going to ask you 2 questions. The first one won't make any sense at first to people who haven't watched the film. And then with the second question, it'll make sense. Maddie, do you get to buy pumpkins?
Yes.
Okay. I feel so much relief knowing that you get to buy pumpkins. So in the film, there's this beautiful scene where you're at the store with your kids,
Mm-hmm.
and Halloween's coming, or it's fall, Thanksgiving's coming, right?
Halloween, fall,
Halloween.
yeah. In the Northeast, at least, every time
Yes.
it hits, I don't know, the end of August, we start having,
Yes.
pumpkins are available and candy corns
Sure.
and things. Yeah.
Yes. Our cultural symbol of the fall, gourds of various sorts placed in various places. Yeah. So, but you suddenly think to yourself, wait a minute, are we allowed to have decorations?
Mhm.
And here's what struck me. It wasn't just the panic, but it was like, I love pumpkins. Are these, and then you get the answer from him, and then you're like, these might be the last pumpkins I ever get to buy if I stay with you. I mean, there's so many pieces to that. But you were grieving, not just in the middle of the grief of the present and the past, but you were fearing future grief as well.
Yeah.
That was such a powerful scene.
Yeah. Grief is brutal, man. And
Mm,
I really thought that because my husband was on probation, he's off probation now, but I really thought I and people like me were the only ones who had all this loss around betrayal, but it turns out that's not true. And I've had so many people who've had to move or who've just lost the joy of a particular holiday, who didn't get to bond with a new baby, because maybe their own baby,
right.
or a niece or nephew, because the betrayal happened around that time. If you caught your partner on a Valentine's Day, it's just I'm not the only one, but that was really painful. And what I found, and the way I wrote that scene was, I was sobbing about the goddamn pumpkins. But truly, what was up for me was I missed my mom too.
Mm,
The
yes.
pumpkins and my mom who died when I was 16. And I just wanted some comfort. And I wrote about that, and that part of the film, I'm so happy when people recognize it, because to me, the film is about grief. I mean, it's really,
Yes.
it's a love story and it's a grief story. But what most
Yes.
people say is it's a story of that lady who stayed with the guy who did the thing. But to me, it's a story of grief, and old grief and new grief and navigating grief. And when my mom died, I was 16 and I didn't know anybody else who had lost a mom, and my sadness and my grief just felt so other, and I didn't want to share it because I thought it would be so off-putting. And I really thought if I started to share it, I would never stop crying, and it would make other 16-year-olds uncomfortable. And I was probably right, to be honest.
Yeah.
But this time around, I was like, I gotta share it because it's just unmanageable otherwise. And I also know plenty of women and men who are betrayed partners, or the betrayer themselves, who don't have, their parents may well be alive, but it's not a loving relationship, or it's a secret. But for me, it was just a real tearing, clawing of the scars of grief. And I really, really imagined that my mom would have been, and I did talk to her, just not on this, this planet, this realm, but I did. And I, again, I think those are the times that for me, groups, awesome, recovery groups, therapy, EMDR, meditation. But for me, those were the times that really brought me to my knees. And there is an element of my recovery that is very spiritual, because there was no person. I love to talk. You can hear me. I'm just chatty. But even my angel, who was so comforting, there were times where it was even beyond her ability. So and I think for my partner too, I mean, I try not to speak for him, but that became a very big part of his recovery, was his relationship with a higher power. And that became part of our couplehood. That was not a part of our marriage. That was not a big thing for us together. So, so yeah, grief is just not manageable without, for me, without a lot of help.
Others.
So, and I'm still grieving. I'm grieving, the marriage and the life that I thought I was going to have. And that doesn't mean I'm not having a pretty good life, but it's not what it was supposed to look like. And it's not what I thought it was going to look like. And there are things that I am really, really sad about still, and I won't get them back, so I think for me, when I have someone who's in deep grief, I try to just be quiet and witness, because it's really uncomfortable, because it's not something that can be fixed. And I like to fix things. I like to be fixed. And it's just sometimes to just stand by and go, yeah.
Yeah. I love how you just put together two things side by side that I'm sure that there are listeners who can't quite imagine holding both, right? That you're the same person who, 30 minutes or so ago said you're in a really happy marriage, and you still grieve the life you should have had, could have had, would have, right? The alternative, right? And that those coexist.
Absolutely. And it's not always comfortable.
No.
Or easy. And that is a choice that I've made to stay in this marriage. And sometimes I think it's in 1 hour that I'm feeling all of those things. It's a complicated kind of grief too. It's not like, oh, we had, 100-year-old grandpa who lived his great life and now is saying goodbye.
Right.
The grieving of a marriage, it's kind of like that a marriage that's still here. So can I celebrate and grieve at the same time? I have to. I've heard people who also say, I'm better, I'm all in faith and I have no fear. That's not been my experience. But I try to let faith lead the dance with fear. Sometimes fear is leading and sometimes faith is leading, but more these days I wake up and I let faith lead.
Thank you.
I like the fact that you're sharing the and experience, because sometimes a lot of folks will say it's one or the other.
Right.
And a lot of folks struggle with that, because us humans, we don't always do that. We want it to be fixed.
Yes.
And that's I'm all in, or I'm all out, or he's all bad, or she's all good. And the truth is, it's really in the middle.
Yeah.
And it's both. It's both those things. I love this person. I don't know that I can be with them. I love this person, and yet they're the person who hurt me the most, that brought me to my knees in a way I've never had before. And it's both, and how maddening that is.
Yeah. And in my group that I'm in now, because we're a little bit farther along,
Yeah.
there are, I'd say half of us are married and half are not. And it's not and neither one ensures when this happens, when you have experienced betrayal trauma, I don't know anybody who gets over it. And you get through it and you, like you said, what did you call it? I love that.
Traumatic growth.
Yeah, post-traumatic growth.
Yeah, we call it
But it
reconnection.
doesn't mean the trauma didn't happen. And there are days where it just informs, I had someone say to me, I went and I feel really honored that I got to go to ITAP, the symposium this year, and do a presentation. And I'm leading some groups and I coach. And someone said, and I talk about the movie and I present the movie at places. And a really great friend said, "Oh my God, accidentally brave still? Like, don't you want to just not think about it sometimes?" And I said, "Oh yes, I want to not think about it sometimes, but I do." So
Yeah.
I'm trying not to wallow in it, but I'm also, as opposed to when my mom died and I was like, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good. This is a defining part of who I am. And I like who I am. I do have a happy life and it is a huge part of my life. And so I embrace that, or else it just comes out my ears. I don't know how else to do it. And look, there are times I want to just relax and not talk about sex addiction or betrayal trauma, and
Sure.
lie down and watch a silly show. And guess what? Boom. There's a joke about pornography. There's a joke about a hooker. There's a joke about a sex worker. There's a dark thing about something. There was a song that played at my wedding. I don't know where the triggers are going to come. So sometimes I just try to own that that's just part of my story and not walk around going, today is going to be a day I'm not going to experience this, because I don't know a partner who's gone through this who doesn't have something come out of the blue on a day that is a beautiful day. And look, like any grief, when I graduated from college, it was a happy day that was also sad because I really wanted my mom to be there, also at my wedding. And I feel like there's been some deep loss in my marriage as well, even though we're still married. And there are times that word bittersweet really applies. And there are other times where we just get to be silly again. And that is something I'd love to share. That is back, because there's nothing lighthearted. We had some really intense, beautiful moments in early recovery, but not a lot of silly.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
It's a real, I would say my partner was probably like really afraid to make a joke, and laughter and humor was such a big part of our relationship. So when that started to come back, it was thrilling and exciting.
I want to ask you about that because that was one of the questions I wrote down. So in the show, in the film, your humor is so at times just very pointed. I mean, it's we were both, my wife and I were both just cracking up at a few different moments. And I think about like one of the first moments I noticed it was when you it's I think the first day you're texting with your angel and she's like, "Can you talk right now?" And you say back in a text, "I'm on a walk with him, but he can walk alone." How apropos. Is that- I mean, it's like I was laughing so hard, but you also wrestle, it felt to me. So you tell me if I'm projecting or if I'm actually picking up on something that was there. It's like you were wrestling with that part of yourself. Can I make a joke right now? Is this a defense? Is this like a defense mechanism? Is this just a healthy part of me that survived up to now? Um, should I feel ashamed of making a joke right now? And that thread sort of was woven through the whole story. So I've never heard this talked about, humor after betrayals.
I haven't really heard it talked about either. Maybe we need to do another whole we need to do a lecture on it. It is a real tricky thing.
Yeah.
The tone, I mean, when we were advertising the play, when I was doing the show as a play, people were like, it's hilarious. And everyone's like, don't say that. I'm like, but that it is. It's
It
funny.
is.
I mean, you know, there's an old joke when I'm also a big fan of Al-Anon. I know you're not really supposed to talk about it, but I'm talking about it. Not anybody else's story, but mine. It's helped me.
Yeah, right.
There's a joke that the newcomer is coming to a group. Al-Anon is for people affected by addiction. And then, and so there's 2 rooms and neither of them are marked. And one is the room for AA and one's the room for Al-Anon. And somebody says, how am I going to know which room is Al-Anon? And the old timer says, okay, so there's the 2 doors. You're going to hear laughter coming out of one door, go to the other one. So like the addicts are allowed to laugh and the partners are like miserable, but that's not true. And what I will say, it kind of goes back to what we're talking about company and about groups. And when I did this retreat with Marnie, there were tons of laughs. We were laughing and laughing with each other, but it was because we all understood the context. And I think when I would go out with friends too early, when I was trying to go out with my normal, wonderful friends too early in this journey, and I'd hear them go, ugh, my husband's the worst. He left the toilet seat up, you know, ha, 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 ha. That I could not. But when I was with a group of betrayed partners, we could have, and perhaps it definitely was some gallows humor, but I think, again, I started to have laughs with them, and then I learned how to laugh again in the greater world. And I've always used humor and I've always led with humor. And sometimes for me, if I make the joke first, you can't laugh at me. So I do think with this particular situation with my husband and going, well, you know, we'd love to, but we're not allowed in that area. You know, I'm making you feel more comfortable about something that's not comfortable. If I make a joke about it, I'm saying I'm okay. So sometimes I use it in a manipulative way, but I think the good part of humor, like I said, that's come back is that a couple or most couples that go through this had a language all our own. You know, if you've been living with someone for any amount of time, you have this history and you have things that are funny only to the 2 of you. And most couples, I would say, share a sense of humor. And I always say addiction is a thief. And I think that's one of the things that gets stolen. It's not, I love watching Saturday Night Live. It was like Trigger City. And I love a silly comedy, you know, a lighthearted, let's watch something with nothing sexual because it's on at 8 p.m. Forget it. This is a joke to a lot of people. So humor and navigating what's funny. And, you know, for the poor, I do have, like I said, deep compassion for the addict who's coming back in and telling a joke and then going, that's not funny. Sorry, I don't want to offend you. You know, being careful kills humor. So there has to be a level of comfort with each other.
Yeah.
But it's the same with probably dancing, you know, like, oh, can we have music again? Can we have lightness? Can we go to the art museum? And by the way, just to let everybody know, my kids are doing really, really, really well. And one of them is studying in Rome, and my husband and I were able to go visit him. And we went to an art museum, the 2 of us, just my husband and me. And I was like, gosh, I was thinking about betrayed partners and addicts in early recovery. This beautiful art museum in Rome was just filled with naked bodies and the stories that we were being told about the courtesans and it's everywhere. So we were able to kind of laugh about that now or acknowledge it. Acknowledging it is sometimes really important, but in early recovery, my gosh, it's not funny. But
Right.
but we have to be able, in my opinion, I have to be able to laugh at myself. And one of the things I do talk about in the movie is I was carrying Stephanie Karn's amazing book, Mending a Shattered Heart, a guide for partners of sex addicts. And I didn't even realize I was carrying it while talking to one of my daughter's new friend and her parents. And I'm like, got this. But I mean, and my daughter did look at me and we just cracked up.
Yes.
And my daughter happens to be a comedy writer and a comedian now, and I so trauma plus time equals comedy. You know, she was funny before. I don't say you have to have a trauma, but yeah, I think that's a really interesting thing to talk about, because laughing is so it relaxes you, right? It's enjoyable, and we go to comedy shows to laugh and relax. But when somebody finds it offensive or not funny, it's the opposite effect. So, and it's
Yeah.
awful to feel like people are laughing at you.
Sure.
So I think this particular disease, people do minimize and people do make fun of it and laugh about it. So I try to be sensitive to that when I'm making a joke, that I don't think this is a joke.
Mm-hmm.
But we also need a release sometimes. My gosh, it's such hard work, recovery.
Yeah. But one of the ways I talk about moving toward acceptance, which is also part of the journey that you outline in the story arc that you crafted, is acceptance doesn't mean I'm done with the pain or the fear, but I'm not limited to it, right? I will make space for laughter again. I will make space for joy again, and I will let that coexist alongside these other things.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I think, well, if I laugh, does that mean I'm okay? And I don't want you to think I'm okay with what,
Right.
you know, everyone asks me about forgiveness. And I think acceptance is harder than forgiveness in my experience. Like, how do I accept what happened? Because it's not acceptable, but I have to accept it because it happened. It's like, that's my reality. But I'm not saying I accept that it was okay, but I accept
Right.
that it happened. And I think that a lot of our culture says if you forgive, then you don't get to be upset anymore. And that's like, Jeannie, what you were saying about both and.
Right.
I forgive you and it's not okay. And I think
Exactly.
the addict, for my husband, I know, making amends, it's a tricky thing to say, I was an addict, my brain was hijacked, and I hurt you. You know, it's a really fine line. And I think there's a reason why in the 12 steps that making amends is step 9, because doing it too early is like, I didn't mean to, and I have a disease, and it's a really, really important, it was very important for me. I will bring it back to myself, that he really understood how much pain he caused me, and not say I was an addict, period. You know, there's so much nuance to that. And I think that for a lot of addicts, I know that's really hard. And for a lot of partners, I know, myself included, there's this thing of like, I don't want to let my guard down. I don't want to laugh. I don't want to say I forgive you. I don't want to dance like we used to, because then nobody's holding you accountable. And what
That's
if I
right.
get hurt again? And what if the world sees me? You know, we moved because we had to, from our little town. And in some ways, it was such a relief that I could take my husband's hand if I wanted to, and not have anybody look and go, oh, she's holding his hand. I guess they're done. And I think, again, what I love about the work that both of you are doing with partners is saying it's not one and done. It's not like, oh, you forgive him and then, or her, and then we're done, or them. But it's like, it's just part of it. And it's not a straight line, just like grief. Forgiveness and acceptance are not just one day I got better. And
Right.
and I think, for, at least in my experience, things that I think I accepted, I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like, I don't accept it. I'm back. I fell off the ladder. I need you to walk me through it again because I'm not okay again. And that's gotten less also. But I think for my husband, he was like, wait, I thought we're good. And it's like, no, we were good yesterday, but then I saw that movie, or then I had that dream, or then you sneezed and it reminded me of that other time you sneezed, you know? So it really is, it is a long road, but I want to say that I'm glad I stayed on it. I really am. And even if we weren't still married, I'm glad for the things that I learned along the way. It's not just, oh, and now the prize is this. I've learned some really great things, and the intimacy that I've gotten to experience. And again, of course, intimacy with my husband, but I do think the groups that I've been in and the therapists I've worked with, it's another kind of intimacy that I hadn't experienced before, letting someone see your messiest, most shameful parts and being told you're still likable or gosh, even lovable is really, really, it's awesome in the true word of awesome, true meaning of awesome.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. I want to be mindful of the time.
I could talk to you guys all day.
I love it. I could
Sounds
too.
great, Maddie.
We'll just do it again because I did have even more questions. Like I've still got a whole list, but
Yeah.
I
too.
that's right.
Part
That's
two.
right. Yes. So here's what I thought I'd ask you at the end. I wondered if, just for those who are listening, you could sort of give them a bit of a double rainbow miracle.
Yeah.
A double rainbow miracle.
Yeah. You want to tell them
Yeah.
what that means, Maddie?
I can, and I will. I really didn't know what to do, and I didn't know what it was going to look like. And I was so broken and so scared. And I went to Family Week at my husband's rehab, and truly every day I woke up and said, I'm at sex addiction rehab, Family Week. What? No, not acceptable, not forgivable, not my life, not okay. And one day when we were in Arizona, there's not a lot of rain in Arizona. There's not a lot of anything in Arizona. And I was angry and I was broken. And my husband was looking tan and strong and rested. And I was like, this is just the worst. I'm home with these kids trying to hold up our life, and you're talking to the cacti and praying and around a fire pit with other guys. What is going on? And we got, because he had good behavior or something, we got to go on a date, and there's nothing to do. You're not allowed to drink. You're not allowed to have sex, and you're not allowed to go visit your wife's hotel room. So there really wasn't much to do. So we took a hike, and it was the first time we'd been alone in a couple of weeks, and we're walking and we really weren't saying anything. And I looked up and there was a double rainbow. And I just said, I hear you, higher power, God, goddess, whoever's mom. I see it. I see it. And that gave me hope to keep going. I've had more experiences like that. And I think that when we reach out to each other on the days where I'm not seeing a double rainbow, I can borrow one of my sisters or brothers in recovery. So that's one of the reasons I keep talking about this, is I've had those days. We had a moment the other day where my whole family was on Zoom together, and I went, oh, we're not even talking about the thing. We're just being a family. And that is just as shocking as a double rainbow for me. I never, ever, I thought the kids were ruined. I thought my family was ruined. I was not going for happy. I was barely aiming for serene. I was aiming for, can the kids not be completely damaged forever? And I'm happy to report I'm hitting above that that bar, and we've had some beautiful moments, and they're real, they're authentic, they're challenging, and we laugh a lot as a family now, and we even dance.
That is wonderful.
You
Thank
guys
you
have
so
all
much.
worked so hard to get where you are.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that this didn't just magically appear
It did.
at
And
this
I
stage.
haven't talked about it a lot, but I do give my husband, he, as I said, he couldn't fix me, but he sure worked hard on himself. And it's not impossible to recover with a partner that's not doing the work. But for me to regain my grounding, it was really, really helpful to watch him show up and do this work, and watch him walk through the world with a huge amount of shame, and suit up and show up and do the work. And it's a big part of his life. He's changed his entire career, which partly was by choice and partly was by consequence. And he is working with addicts now. It's a big part of my life. I don't say it has to be in order to maintain sobriety, but it sure helps. And it keeps us humble. It keeps us grateful. I'm around, because of what I've done, I have people reach out to me. If you want to reach out to me, you can find me, maddiecorman.com. And I hear newcomers, I hear stories every day of excruciating pain, and I'm right here for it. I know it, and it keeps me grounded. It keeps me grateful. I have hope because I've experienced it, and I feel, I don't want to say chosen because that seems really highfalutin, but I feel like there's a purpose to the public nature of our story. So if we can offer that, and again, not perfect. Yes, we're singing and dancing and laughing. Yeah, we sing too, but we also are fighting, and we're crying, and we're dealing with leftover trauma. But then we're singing and dancing and laughing again. So
Well, I'm just so filled with gratitude for you. Yes, I know it was accidentally, but being so courageous and sharing your story. And please pass this also on to your husband, because him sort of blessing you your endeavors here is huge,
yeah,
and your kids as well.
well,
It's a
yeah.
service.
And
Support.
it is, they do give up something for me doing this, and and it is my choice. It's not all of theirs, um and I appreciate their support, and I also
Yeah.
try to appreciate their privacy, and it's sometimes a fine line. But yeah, thank you. And we have all worked really hard, and I wish it could be all done, but there are times where we need brush ups, and there are times where it gets activated again for one or all of us, and we just try to support each other around that as best we can.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you both for being here. Jeannie, thank you for being part of the conversation. Maddie, it was just awesome. Everybody, Accidentally Brave, you can stream it on Max, that I think is becoming HBO again, or
Yeah,
something like that.
HBO match,
Yeah,
Max,
you can
I don't know
find
what
it.
it is, but please try to find
Yes. Yeah, it is worth the time. You do want to be supported, because it is very, very realistic. It will take you through the ride of emotions, but it's incredibly powerful and validating. So thank you both. Thank you, everybody. Lots of love to both of you.
Thank you, sir. Right back at
Truly.
you. And thank you, Maddie, for spending time with us and sharing more of your story with everyone, as well
Thank
as the film
you.
Accidentally
And
Brave.
thank you both for being so wonderful and supportive of the partners out there. It's so amazing to know that there are all these resources, and I send people your way as often as I can, because it's really, really powerful to know that we have a community.
Yes. Yes. Well, thank you. We'll definitely do it again if you're up for it.
I would love to. I have more things. I mean, I want to hear the rest of the questions.
Okay, good.
Good.
We'll get it scheduled. All right. Until
All right,
next
thanks,
time.
you guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Betrayal Recovery Radio, hosted by Dr. Jake Porter. If you value the content we've shared today, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review. This helps others find the show, and we greatly appreciate it. For more resources, visit APSATS.org. That's APSATS.org.